Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Wednesday. We're now halfway through the week. I hope you are well. I hope you enjoyed the football last night. If you watched that Manchester City versus Real Madrid game, I will talk about that a little bit later on in this video because I think it deserves a little bit of comment, and obviously it does kind of play into Arsenal's hands a little bit, maybe. We'll talk about that a little bit later on this video, but wow, what a game that was. High quality stuff indeed. We'll talk about Jorginho, because I think he deserves a bit of discussion ahead of this weekend's game against Brighton. But I wanted to start off today talking about contracts and Arsenal. Always a big talking point, really, when it comes to Arsenal. It seems like basically for the last 10 years, 12 years, however long, way back into Wenger's time, all the talk about Arsenal was always sort of centred around to contracts one way or another going into the summer. And this summer's no different. There's obviously quite a few things going on at Arsenal. Bukayo Saka, William Saliba, and with the return of the Champions League, pretty much everyone, to be honest. So we'll talk about contracts a little bit as well. We'll start with Saka. Obviously, we're still waiting for this contract of his to be announced. It hasn't been yet. I'm not sure what's going on in terms of I don't want to say delay, because I'm not sure it is a delay. I just think Arsenal are sort of biding their time, waiting to announce it. As we've been reporting for some time now, it's all been agreed as far as I'm aware. I don't know if it's actually physically been signed yet, or if they're waiting for something or other to do that. But it has been agreed, and I can't see any reason why that's not going to be announced very, very soon. It's just when Saka's people and Arsenal are ready to all get together, take the photos and get it done. But I think that was obviously a really key thing for Arsenal. They got Gabriel Martinelli done a while ago and signed and announced. They've had Saka done for a fair while now. I think it's probably been about 6 weeks now since it was first sort of verbally agreed in principle. So they've had that done. We don't have anything on Saliba yet, and Mikel was talking about it last week, didn't he? And he again said it was all a question of timing for Arsenal, but fingers crossed that's going to be done. I always felt like Saliba out of those three was going to be the trickiest one, just because of the sort of backstory to it, and Saka and Martinelli are both so invested in Arsenal. They've got the emotional ties of the club. For Martinelli, Arsenal were the one who really trusted in him and brought him over to Brazil when other clubs had turned him down, so he had that emotional tie. Saka obviously has come through at Haaland and is a complete Arsenal boy, so those two always felt like you could probably get those ones done because of that. Is playing a big part of it. But with Saliba, you had the backstory, you had the Arteta stuff, was there really a trust there? Was their relationship that strong because of what had gone on the last couple of years? Mikel always said it was still, and Saliba, when we've spoken to him, has always said he wanted to. He was, wanted to stay. It's just a question of getting it done. So fingers crossed that'll be done fairly soon. But there's a wider picture when it comes to Arsenal and contracts this summer. The fact that Arsenal are now going to be in the Champions League, the wage bill is going to go that direction. Not because of a load of new contracts, but because all these players would have had clauses in their contract, or pretty much all of them, and if they didn't, their agents probably need changing. That if Arsenal qualify for the Champions League, their contracts were going to go up as a result. There'd be clauses in them for them to do that. It's just the way of the world. So Arsenal's wage bill will increase, which, when you look at the qualification for the Champions League, and you always talk about this war chest that Arsenal are going to get because of that and the extra money they're going to spend. They obviously are going to have a lot of extra money to spend because of the Champions League, which is great, but a lot of that money, or certainly a big chunk of that money, will also be for covering the increase in wage bill, which will be pretty dramatic through qualification to the Champions League. And any new signings who arrive, obviously they're going to be Champions League standard players, so their wages are going to be higher as well. And you kind of look at, obviously Saka has been done, Gabriel was done fairly recently, Martinelli's been done fairly recently, we're waiting for Saliba, and then you kind of look at Aaron Ramsdale, that's going to have to be sorted. He came in, he's now absolutely came in not as Arsenal's number one. He's now firmly established at Arsenal's number one. He's been number one for 2 seasons now. He's an England international. He's a top level goalkeeper. He's going to need a new contract. Ben White as well is another player, came in at the same time as Aaron Ramsdale, has shown what a brilliant player he is. He's 2 years into that old deal. You're going to have to be sitting down with Ben White fairly soon. Martin Odegaard, again, he came in at the same time as those two, has just taken his game to a whole new level since he's been at Arsenal for the last 2 seasons. That's going to have to be a contract that needs sorted. So it comes with the success you have on the pitch. Obviously, that results in improved terms for the players if you want to keep them there. The players who've got you there, they need to be rewarded for the performances they're putting in and for the levels that they are taking the club to. And some of those players, Odegaard, White, Ramsdale are such a key, integral part of that. They need new deals. Some of the players have already been rewarded, like I said, Gabriel and all that lot. But there are others still to do. So it's going to be a busy time for Edu. It's not just about signings. As you head into the summer transfer window, you've also got to reward those who are already at the club. The process is well ongoing. We've seen some good results with it so far, but there's still plenty more to do. And, you'd imagine Saka's going to be the next one that is officially announced. And then it's like over to deciding what comes next. And hopefully, if Mikel Arteta is right, it is just a matter of timing until the likes of Saliba follow suit and put pens to paper. So, yeah, interesting times when it comes to contracts at Arsenal, as it always seems to be. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Jorginho now. I think this is going to be really interesting between now and the end of the season, what Mikel Arteta does in midfield. It seems inconceivable to think that Thomas Partey is going to be fit and potentially not starting for Arsenal as they go for the Premier League title over the final games of this season. But I think that is the case. I'd be very, very surprised now if Thomas Partey starts another game between now and the end of the season, which is mad. Just to say it sounds mad. But I just think the way Jorginho's playing since he's come into the side, the way Partey was playing when he lost his place in the side, I just don't see that switch around again in such a short space of time. And so Jorginho's going to have a big part to play between now and the end of the season. He's done so well in the last couple of games. I thought he was great when he came in against Chelsea. I thought he was really good against Newcastle. And I was very worried about him against Newcastle. When the team news came out, I have to admit I was expecting Partey to come back into the side because it just felt like a game that suited Partey. You knew how physical it was going to be. You knew what Newcastle were going to try and do to Arsenal. So it just felt like having Partey in the middle rather than Jorginho was going to be the better option. You did worry with the pace that Newcastle have got and the power that they run with, whether he was going to get turned really, really easily and just wasn't going to be able to offer that sort of protection to the back line. But he answered all those questions in fantastic style. He was brilliant. More passes than anyone else, more touches than anyone else, ran more distance than everyone else. And when you sort of talk about Jorginho, and I mentioned this, I think, in the video, my player ratings video after the game, that all the talk with Jorginho, when you kind of talk about him, yeah, his legs have gone. Brilliant player still, really technically gifted, passes the ball well, but his legs have gone. I think the fact that he ran more distance, a larger distance than anyone else on that pitch, albeit, not as fast as everyone else. He's not got the sprinting capabilities of some players, but his legs clearly haven't gone yet because he's still been able to produce that level of running in such a high intensity game. And it was just a really impressive performance, I thought, from him. And I'd just be very surprised now if Partey comes back in the side. I still think Partey will have a big part to play. He came on against Newcastle, helped tighten the midfield over those sort of final 25 minutes. So I still think we're going to see Thomas Partey a lot. But it's pretty mad how quickly football can change and how quickly players can force their way into the side or force their way out of the side. And I think Partey did that. I don't think Jorginho forced his way into the side. I think it was more down to Partey's form, and it wasn't very good. And whether he's injured and carrying something, I don't know. But when you sat there watching that game at the Etihad, and that Partey wasn't the only player who didn't play well, loads of players didn't play well at the Etihad, but Partey was a major problem in that game, and it looked like he couldn't really run, which makes me think maybe he is carrying an injury. We all know when he went over to Ghana, he had the physio go with him for the last international break. He had to miss a game over there because of injury. So maybe he is carrying something and that's limiting him, because it did kind of look like that in the game against Manchester City, because the way Kevin De Bruyne kept running off him and just running away from him, more importantly, but he just didn't look like he had the pace in his legs to get back, and it was really strange to see. And yeah, so I wasn't surprised when Jorginho came in, but I have to say I've been surprised by the level of his two performances, especially that game at Newcastle, which, as I said, I thought might be one game too far for Jorginho, but he provided Arsenal with that stability in the midfield. He's got the technique that we all know about, and yeah, he did very, very well, and I can't see that changing. So let me know what you guys think. Would you be bringing Thomas Partey back in for any of these last three games, or do you think Jorginho's done enough now to start through till the end of the season, and Partey's going to have to make do with a place on the bench, which, yeah, as I said, inconceivable to even think about that just a short time ago. That kind of does beg the question as well, Arsenal's midfield rebuild this summer, which is going to be pretty dramatic, hopefully. Whether it be just one record-breaking sign-in or potentially two massive money signings, we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly an area Arsenal are going to focus on. It's not just in the midfield. I think they're going to be looking at adding at least one centre-back, and again some cover or competition for Bukayo Saka on the right hand side. So there's lots of work for Arsenal to do, but certainly in that midfield I think we're going to see quite a dramatic shift, or Arsenal certainly attempting to do something pretty dramatic in terms of the midfield. Whether they can actually get the deals done that they're going to be pushing for remains to be seen. We know that's not always easy, especially with Arsenal. We've seen they've missed out on their key priority targets a fair amount of times over the last few years, but added Champions League revenue, the lure of the Champions League as well. Hopefully that's going to make it easy when it comes to talking to clubs and talking to players. But you look at what Mikel's doing with the midfield at the moment and sort of moving things around, trying to get things right. Again, I think that kind of speaks volumes about what he's really going to try and do this summer to take this team up to the next level when it needs to go up to the next level if it's going to be competing not just for the Premier League but for the Champions League as well. Because if anyone watched that game last night at the Bernabeu, my word, the level of performance, the level of quality of those two teams, that was a high quality game. The two goals were absolutely ridiculously good. Vinicius, who's just such a big game player, he just turns it on. Not just a big game player, actually, he's such a consistent player now. And to see the way he has grown at Madrid from young Brazilian talent who came through, who everyone was like, well, how have they spent so much money on such a young kid? It could completely backfire. And then you just seen the way he's developed into the player he is now, and he's still so young, but he's producing such high level performances week in, week out. He's changing the game, changing games, making his mark in big games all the time, and it was such a brilliant goal yesterday. I mean, Camavinga did fantastically at left back as well, which kind of sums up how good he is as a player, that you can just fill in at left back and play like he did, and he played such a big role in that goal. But the way Vinicius took it on and the finish, the power he got in it, absolutely fantastic. And at that point you thought, here we go, Real Madrid are doing it again, and Man City are struggling again. But as always this season, or for the last few seasons, Kevin De Bruyne, when City needed him, he stepped up, and the technique on that hit was just ridiculously good. It was the amount of times I've watched the replay and the way he hits that outside of his foot to generate the power he does, it was just such a pure strike, just top quality. And the whole game was, I loved watching it. It was really, really good. I can't wait for the second leg. Madrid, you can never rule them out because of what they do in the Champions League year in, year out, but you'd certainly say Man City are in the driving seat for it. And if they play to the level they played against Arsenal at the Etihad, I think they'll probably have too much for Madrid. But Madrid is certainly going to be a real threat on the counter-attack at the Etihad, and City will have to watch out for that. But, if I'm putting money on it right now, I'd say that Man City will go through. And it was just a real sort of example of what sort of level Arsenal are going to have to produce next season to compete in the Champions League. Look, I don't think no one's expecting Arsenal to go and win the Champions League in their first season back in it after 6 years, but you want to see them compete and have a good campaign, whether it be getting to the quarters, whatever, just getting through the group. I don't know what the expectation is going to be. It's the first season back, so you can't think too highly, but it's going to be a big challenge for Arsenal, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach it, because the level of games in those, certainly in knockout rounds, are just so ridiculously high, and it's something Arsenal haven't experienced for a long time now. So it's going to be interesting. For Man City, I mean, they can't afford to rest anyone, or you wouldn't think they'd be able to rest anyone this weekend because the Premier League's on the line. But it must be very hard for Pep to look at that. He didn't make any substitutes last night. So what does he do against Everton? Did he not make any substitutes because he decided, whatever happens, I am going to change the team for Everton and keep everyone fresh for the second leg against Madrid? It's going to be really interesting to see what he does and whether this has a big impact on Arsenal's hopes of the title. The fact he didn't make any subs was interesting in a game of that level, that intensity, and they did look tired, I thought, City, in the final 20 minutes, and yet he still didn't make any changes. So whether that was part of the long-term plan in terms of his thinking of what he was going to do for his team selection against Everton, we'll have to wait and see. But I saw a lot of Arsenal fans on my mentions yesterday hoping that that performance is going to play into the weekend's game and might result in City potentially dropping points. We'll wait and see, but I think everyone's going to be eagerly watching that game at Goodison Park and seeing if it does have any knock-on effects and what exactly Pep is going to do with that team selection. Alright, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Please do enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow as we really start to gear up towards that big match at the Emirates at the weekend, Arsenal versus Brighton. Mikel Arteta's press conference is, I should know this, I did look at the email, I think it's Friday afternoon. I'll have to double check that, so don't 100% take that for certain from me, because I've forgotten what I read on the email, but it's certainly coming up at the end of the week, Friday. I think it is 1:30, so keep your eyes peeled for all the usual stuff from me for that. Until then, everyone have a very good day. I'll speak to you soon.